Indianapolis, Pheano Black, the #1 seed, versus Michael Hamilton, the ultimate Guardian Control master, the 6th seed, who has really gone through such a gauntlet of chains and briars, things that you're not probably prepared for, you haven't put in too much practice against, but he did go through, maybe digging into some of that last year's meta, that muscle memory to win these. But here we go, right out of the gate, Pheano Black, 2 aura start.
Huge start from Pheano.
And look at him. He's just kind of saying, all right, that's a little sweet right there. No problem. I'll take that all day long. Some Merciful Retribution. And there's a Shimmers on the board. That's a great start. Absolutely ideal start here for Pheano Black. Again, jamming out the Merciful Retribution was already in itself a great one to have. Shimmers presenting a lot of threats, and right away, Time Skipper boots.
Yeah, Michael Hamilton not willing to let this go ahead and snowball on him. Going to use that Winner's Wail to go ahead, take out a Merciful Retribution, and I have a feeling second attack probably going to clean up this Shimmers of Silver as well.
Must be. You have to. This is exactly what those boots are there for. And early on in this metagame, Prism was really dominating Bravos a lot more regularly because Bravos weren't using time skippers.
Yep.
They were relying on things like Blink to get the job done. And back in the day, you used to use this time snap potion in order to go ahead and find those extra action points. But this is it. So we're going to start by cleaning things up. But Pheano has a full grip here, so he might be able to actually just sneak something else out if he wants to.
Yeah, we'll see if there's another aura in hand.
So the hammer's being presented. I'm not sure which one he's poking at, but I would imagine it's Merciful Retribution.
My guess as well. I wasn't 100% on that, but we'll see that resolved as Pheano makes a decision here. It does seem like there's a play available to Pheano going into the tank, trying to figure out how to get maximum value out of this hand. Facing the first salvo from Michael Hamilton, just a little go wide, control these auras.
All right, so that's the case. It's going to go to Soul. It's going to deal 1 arcane damage going the other way. Michael Hamilton is just going to take it, no problem. And hey, why not? A free Lightning Surge is going to clean up the Shimmers. That is an effective response to what Pheano Black was leaning on being a massive opener.
Yeah, that's why Lightning Surge just so important as one of the Lightning cards that Bravo has access to. You think of Bravo. It's not an aggressive deck. It's not the type of deck that uses Lightning Surge typically. It just needs a free attack, and it's able to do so while getting a checkbox for that lightning element that allows Bravo to trigger.
In reality, I think that was a perfect hand there for Michael Hamilton as a response. You think that Pheano is like, wow, what a perfect hand, and Michael's like, wow, what a perfect response. So if both players now are coming in real nice. Now, this is a dangerous game to play here. You've pitched to play Miraging Metamorph. A lot of players will just snap drop a card to pop that, but at the instant speed, you can go ahead and drop with another blue. And if he drops a blue and has another 4-drop aura, that is a real trap.
Yep.
So Michael Hamilton, again, no sloucher. He sees that one a mile away.
Yeah, Pheano's setting it up. And I think I'm suspicious if I'm Michael Hamilton, given how long Pheano thought on the last turn. It seems like potentially setting up for that Phantasm Pop instant speed aura. I think maybe Michael Hamilton sniffing it out here, just going to go ahead, throw that Pulse in front. Again, a key resource, Pulse. Michael Hamilton not afraid to go ahead and convert that onto defense.
All right, so there's the blue, and that card in pocket could potentially be, if we're really reading the runes here, that's probably a 4-drop aura. But again, Michael Hamilton, like you mentioned, very committed to the defensive side of things. A lot of players would have just absorbed that 7, but if he doesn't like the hand, but he had a Pulse, like you mentioned, just tossing it out into the wilderness.
Yeah, it sees this as critical. Just maintain battlefield priority, maintain at least parity, and never let that Prism deck really get rolling. And I am so interested to see how this matchup develops over time. Both players proving themselves masters of this archetype. Both have taken down many of the opposing decks on the way to sitting here at the top of calling Indianapolis, but there can only be one winner.
All right, so Pheano is holding on to an unmovable. I believe there's a Genesis in there. He's taking a peek at the arsenal, getting all the information ready to go. That unmovable is key against a Starvo player. Sorry, most Starvo players, because we've seen the patience that Michael Hamilton has. He's not necessarily the most aggressive Starvo player, and that was from an arsenal. So there you go. That was exactly the trap that Pheano was trying to lay, but Michael Hamilton really danced around all of those little pitfalls.
Yep, that's the type of trap that really moves you through those early rounds, and then you run up against a player like Michael Hamilton, and it just might not work anymore. And Flake, this is the first chance we've had to really talk about it. I want to talk about Crown of Reflection being the choice for Pheano. Haven't seen a ton of Crown of Reflection thus far today. It's been mostly Arcanite Skullcap. I think that's a big difference here, and I think it shows how committed Pheano is to his game plan. We talk about Michael Hamilton doing things a little different. Pheano does too. I don't want to take any of that away from Pheano. If I'm focusing too much on Michael Hamilton, that's not fair. Pheano deserves just as much credit for innovating his archetype and doing things differently, and Crown of Reflection points to exactly that.
Yeah, well, the Crown of Reflection in this case is just in a way to sort of go ahead and drop a blue without losing your action point. You know, there's no go again when you drop that blue aura in there. You just crack it again. The Arcane Barrier is completely negligible. Here is some tech, my friend. This is the card you were mentioning.
Getting wide again with that lead the charge. Going to go ahead and fire off 2 attacks on this turn. We assume going to start with an Autumn's Touch. It's going to clean up. Look how committed Michael Hamilton is to this plan. It just keeps cleaning up. Time to take out that Merciful Retribution, and I bet we're probably going after that Passing Mirage next.
Yeah, he's pointing to the lead. The charge says, all right, I gain an action point. The next time you play an action card with cost 2 or greater, gain 1. So that is exactly what happens. So lead the charge gives him another chance to swing again and to go ahead full Zamboni mode and start cleaning up these auras. But again, Pheano Black has the luxury of basically playing at instant speed, but it's a dangerous game to go ahead and drop a valuable aura on the board with an action point still there. So I think Pheano's not really going to respond to this unless it's with perhaps an Arclight Sentinel. But even then, I don't think this is the right time for that. I think he's just sort of evaluating and just taking some time to breathe here. Again, this is for all the marbles. This is the finals, Brian. And again, that's 2 Merciful Retributions off the board. And like you mentioned, endgame, those can be dangerous.
They absolutely can, especially against Michael Hamilton's configuration. We see some people use Arcane Barrier. I agree with Michael Hamilton. I think that's giving up too much for a pretty narrow situation. You're just supposed to control things the way Michael is thus far, and doing an excellent job at keeping these auras off the battlefield. Of course, that Lead the Charge, very different from Go Again. As we mentioned, Go Again isn't going to let you clean multiple auras. Lead the Charge will, because it gives you an action point, not Go Again.
Michael Hamilton does have an arsenal now. He's taken 5 damage over the course of this game, but the most important thing that he needs to be keeping track of is the fact that he's cleaned up a hell of a lot of auras, as Pheano Black is just continuously to dump these auras on the board that are really the bread and butter of what this deck wants to do. However, Michael's been up to the task. There's an Otarath, and Otarath is a nice one to have. Again, Otarath is a card that upon attacking, if that connects, it's an additional loss of life. And this can have some significant implications in terms of just the severity of each one of those attacking auras.
Especially in Pheano's deck. When we were looking at things like Spectral Shield, Pheano's really good at putting a lot of Spectral Shields out there onto the field and getting wide and just making multiple attacks. So I am usually pretty medium on Otarath's impact on the game. I think it's a completely different ballgame when it comes to Pheano's list.
So there it is. It's another attack. Michael Hamilton just happy to take the 2 off of the Otarath, and sure, why not? But hey, we're going to go ahead and create another Spectral Shield, and I believe we're going to swing with it as well. So that's exactly what Michael's just kind of digesting here. But again, the fact that each of those auras that are swinging in typically for 1 damage, Otarath makes that a little bit more dangerous. So he's going to take another 2 off of the Spectral Shield damage, and we're going to go ahead and pass that turn. Still an arsenal card for Pheano, and I'm wondering if that is that unmovable that we saw earlier.
I think so, Flake. I haven't seen it go anywhere else. It would make sense for that to be the unmovable. So that kind of commits Pheano to playing a little slower, but is that playing into Michael Hamilton's hands? Because Michael isn't really coming with those big attacks. If Pheano just gives up the arsenal to put the unmovable there and Michael Hamilton plays this game, just take out those auras, take out those auras, take out those auras, it's really going to actually slow down development for Pheano. And you're seeing his hand get sort of gummed up. There's a soul shield in it, there's the unmovable, and there's no targets for it. And this is what we saw the first time Michael Hamilton took down Chain, is that Chain had all these unmovables and wanted to answer Hamilton's attacks. They just never came.
Yeah, no, Michael's doing a very good job here, coming out with the Swiffer Sweeper, saying, all right, I got another one that I can clean up, and I can, add an attack to this. This might be just a situation, I think, where Michael Hamilton he could potentially swing face and just clean up some of those spectral shields as well. But there is possibly, though it's completely far fetched. You just pass with the extra action point and freeze Pheano from playing at instant speed. Another one of those important auras, but I don't think so. I think he's got a hammer swing associated with this too, and if possible, he's looking to just clean up a few of those spectral shields that are just sort of floating about.
The more I see Michael's deck, the more I think it's just built brilliantly. I think it's so well put together, so thoughtful. Just small things like leaning on something like disable in the blue slot. Disable as a card is not going to have a huge impact on arsenals in many scenarios. It's pretty easy to block out, but it blocks for 3. And Michael Hamilton is so cognizant of the block value of every single card in the deck, pitch value of every single card in the deck, just making sure he can play in exactly the fashion we're seeing.
Yeah, he is just a clean freak at this point. He doesn't want to see anything left on the board. He's just doing a good job. Now, keep in mind, of all the lead the charges that Michael Hamilton has in the deck, he has played 2 and he has pitched 1. So that's it. That's all. But keep in mind, 3 blinks is another way to go ahead and get a 2-for-1 action when it comes to cleaning up some of those auras. Is Pheano here is just going to go ahead and play a a War-Tune Herald. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is a Okay, so it's a yellow War-Tune Herald. It is just a 6 attack. The on-hit here is purely just to go to Soul, but what he does here is he pops it.
Yeah, there you see that disable coming through with its large attack value. All the more willing to go ahead and pop those Phantasm attacks. However, we are going to have the Phantasmal Footsteps go ahead and restore the action point. Going to get in with a second Herald. Herald of Triumph this time, I believe.
Yeah, the Herald of Triumph is the next one that's coming through. Again, the Phantasmal Footsteps is so clutch in these matchups because of the rescuing of the action point. But again, all right.
Has it again. Glacial Footsteps. Going to go ahead and pop that one.
And the Herald of Triumph in that case does make your defending attacks -1, so you need a 7 or greater to pop it. And he's like, how about 8? I got some change for you too.
There's a reason why these high attack value blues are so present through Michael's list. It's this matchup.
He has been so, yeah, you know what, I honestly, Michael Hamilton's success really started weeks and weeks ago when he starts designing and playtesting these decks, and sometimes looking outside the box with Lead the Charges. And Lead the Charge wasn't on the radar until relatively recently, and Glacial Footsteps was nowhere on the radar, I believe, for anybody.
Yeah, it's been a super rare occurrence that I've seen Glacial Footsteps show up in these Bravo lists, and maybe even less so Disable. Just not a card that's present all that much. But look how effective it's all been. It's all coming together thus far for Michael Hamilton. The question that is going to absolutely determine this match, how does Michael Hamilton start winning the game? It's one thing to not lose the game. You ultimately got to win the game.
Yeah.
How does Michael Hamilton really plant his flag in that endeavor?
I mean, the traditional way that these matchups go is that Starvo is swinging for the fences, and Prism goes down to 20 or sub 20, and then in exchange for a development of the aura game, and then Prism can come back. I have seen games that have been essentially 35 to 7 or 8 around that range, and then Prism starts clawing back slowly but surely. Like you mentioned, death by 1,000 cuts. You go in with all of those auras coming through, and in this case, basically, it has been Michael Hamilton who has said, no, I can play the slow game too. So we're going to just continue to play it slow, swing hammer, clean up all the auras. And in this case, that hammer is just absorbed, and I think Pheano Black might be coming back with a nice attack here.
Yeah, going to go ahead and take some damage for the first time here. That points to certainly a more explosive turn from Pheano. Has that Tunic ready to go, so more resources available on this turn.
That Frostbite is an aura, and you will find that out the hard way when you see a Merciful Retribution on the board and you take 1 damage because you gave your opponent a Frostbite. That is something to keep in track of. So I believe that is a blue War-Tune Herald pitching 2, absorbing the Frostbite in this case, coming in for 5, if I'm not mistaken, on hit Soul.
That looks correct to me as well, Flake, and we'll have to see what Michael Hamilton wants to do for defense here. Throwing a lot of praise Michael's way, but Pheano also cool, calm, collected, very willing to go ahead and just expend some resources, run Michael really out of the things that he needs to use to go ahead and control this field. But I think we just maybe have hit that point where Michael says, okay, I've got my own things to say about this matchup now. I have something to do, bring some damage my way, and I'm going to throw some back your way too.
You know, you can see it in the eyes. The focus and a little bit more of the strain from Michael Hamilton. He looks like he is just really dead set on keeping all the outside noise just completely muted. And you look at Pheano and he's a little bit more relaxed. He's a little bit more laid back. He's looking at his opponent. He's just kind of just biding his time and just breathing slower. The intensity that Michael's bringing to this game is essentially countered by Pheano, who seems to be, like you mentioned, cool, calm, collected the whole way through.
I will say this about Pheano. Pheano has had an incredibly relaxed demeanor throughout the weekend, always jovial, always joking with his opponents. It's kind of toned that down in this matchup. See much more quiet, much more focused, sitting there, hands crossed, looking to see exactly what Michael Hamilton is trying to do. Look, has taken the tournament seriously the entire time, but has kind of stepped it up to another level where, the time to kind of interact with my opponent is over. I am in hard focus mode. I'm going to figure out a way to become calling Indianapolis champion.
So activation of Crown of Seeds here is going to take one off of that, but we're just going to pop it anyways, I believe, at this point. And, if that's the whole turn, then that's the whole turn. Michael Hamilton has done a great job of just mitigating a lot of the damage, but it seems like Pheano has signed up. I don't want to say it's intentional, but it seems like he's pivoted off of Aurus to go Heralds. But here's the clapback we found of an Earth card, and we found a Pulse. It is time to get nasty, and that is a 7, a red or evergreen, if I'm not mistaken, come in for 9 dominate go again. So here comes Michael Hamilton back into the fray.
Yeah, and if you're Pheano, I think if you have any kind of hand to answer back with, you just say, okay, this is not an on-hit. You're not really disturbed by this at all. And I'm looking at Pheano's hand. I see a Genesis. I see some other aura options. I might just use this as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm trading some life points at this point to try and set something up. I haven't been able to make a battlefield thus far. You can have my life points, Michael. You just can't have my auras.
There's a Celestial Cataclysm in there, I see. Another Herald. I believe that's a blue. It could be a Haze Bending, if I'm not mistaken, just kind of peeking at the cards as Pheano's going through. And like you mentioned, spot on there, Brian. He's going to say, no problem. I can eat this. No, no worries. I've got something to do on my turn as well. As really, Michael Hamilton has given Pheano a lot of leeway up to now. Hasn't really had too much aggression, but he's going to go through and just start doing the damages himself, and he's going to respond with that Genesis, and that is a massive piece here.
Yeah, and Pheano with additional cards in hand, able to go ahead and use that Genesis. Going to go ahead and send the Celestial Cataclysm to the soul, draw a card.
So that is a light card. It is not an illusionist
Correct.
card.
No Spectral Shield here.
And that can factor in, but ultimately the card draw is pretty good. Now, there's no Vestige of Soul here, so you're not getting any bonus off the pitch, but he is going to be swinging in with Genesis. Keep in mind, it does not have Go Again yet, but you can find a way to sneak that through.
Yeah, absolutely. Cards in the soul, so possible to make a Prismatic Shield. Do you think there are still cards in Pheano's hand right now?
Yeah, there it is. Get rid of that Soul Shield. He's saying, all right, well, you're not attacking, so I don't need these D-reacts that much. We're going to create a Spectral Shield, get the Go Again off that first attack of the Genesis, and now I'm starting to, again, build up that board state. Michael Hamilton did so much work early on with the time skippers and 2 times lead the charge to go ahead and pressure and eliminate so many of those auras, and he's still got work to do.
Yeah, Michael now looking for a 5-card hand. Going to go ahead and cash in that Tunic for that combo we've talked about all weekend long. Crown of Seeds plus Tunic leads to 5-card hands and a little bit of defense as well. So can Michael Hamilton continue to seize on some of that initiative we saw last turn with the first Starvo activation coming through?
And it's possible now that we can go back to one of those original strategies that Starvo typically leans on, which is big attack to face, create pressure, swing hammer at something that's important. In this case, you have a Genesis and a Haze Bending. Now, those are both very, very big cards. But there it is. There's the Starvo revealing. We've got a Winter's Bite. We've got the Heaven's Claws and an Evergreen. Now, it's going to be pressure to face here. There's no way to really go ahead and clean out 2 auras at once. So we're just going to go with the red Evergreen for 9 dominate go again. One of those is going to get soaked by the Spectral Shield, but you're going to see a follow-up on the hammer. Now, I have my leanings here in terms of what I want to clean up, but both of those auras seem quite tantalizing to swing a hammer at.
Here's the thing, Flake. I would go after the Genesis. I have a feeling Michael Hamilton is going to surprise me. I think his focus on keeping the battlefield clean is so integral to the game plan here. Haze bending going to represent multiple spectral shields over the course of this game, and I just don't think Michael Hamilton's game plan accounts for that. I think it has to take out the haze bending, and obviously Genesis can do the same thing, right? That's the problem here. And maybe you're just in a no-win situation and you go ahead and eat the Genesis, and I'm overthinking this. I am just going to shut up as an analyst here and see what Michael does, because I think that's the only way we're going to have clarity.
It's tough to really read Michael because of how he's been playing Starvo, a little bit more unorthodox than most of the field. But here he is standing on top, so you're like, okay, well, I gotta trust his opinion.
I want to learn from him at this point. I want to know what he's doing a little bit differently.
So 9 attack is going to get soaked, but look at that. There is that unmovable. You mentioned that was just kind of a slog in the arsenal, I think. That one wasn't from hand, if I'm not mistaken. That was just the... I believe that was from Arsenal.
I believe you're correct, Blake.
All right, no problem. So, hey, Genesis it is. I guess we're still kind of good at this game, huh? You and I figured...
Got a little in my own head there, but ultimately Genesis is Genesis, and you got to take it out to be able to move on.
All right, so there should be a spectral shield. All right, so there should be a spectral shield that's coming out over here, if I'm not mistaken, off of the haze bending, if I'm not kind of losing my marbles here. So perhaps that Pheano maybe just missed that one, because haze bending should have given him a spectral shield off of the destruction of Genesis.
I think you're correct, Flake, but not seeing it here.
All right, so Michael Hamilton is still getting the job done, pushing 9 damage to face. Obviously, that was met and basically stuffed by an unmovable, but at the same time, we're still getting some work done here. As we did manage to get rid of one of those massive pieces of Genesis. Genesis is incredibly important.
Yeah, haze bending's still present, but I think that Genesis just could have spiraled this game very quickly with a few good hits. And Michael's entire game plan is saying, don't let the game spiral, don't let the game spiral, don't let the game spiral. And now, going to see if there's any kind of answer from Michael. Pheano's life total, creeping down. That's kind of the way this matchup is going. A little bit here, a little bit there. Both players giving up some life total.
All right, so a little bit more of that jovialness, as you mentioned, as the players are getting a little bit, lighthearted, and they're just feeling that perhaps some of that stress is melting away. You're in the spot now. You've lived in the stress. You've been on camera multiple times by now. Let's have some fun. And
yeah, there reaches a point, Flake, where you're just like at home. You've spent all day in the feature match area. I mean, Michael Hamilton has played how many matches on camera in a row now, and it just feels like the right place. It feels like where you belong. It doesn't phase you anymore. You're just there. You're playing flesh and blood, and you're doing the best you can, looking to become Indianapolis calling champion.
And I mean, the best you can, and for one of these players, is going to be a champion of the calling, and that is a huge achievement. And Michael's been there; he's played on camera, he's won one, but Pheano has basically dumpstered this entire field. So this is just another obstacle on the road to victory, and they're both looking pretty comfortable, as it were.
No, I think so. I think both players just finding their groove now, and Pheano's groove involves more and more spectral shields as time goes on. Haze bending going to contribute to that plan. We know those spectral shields are lurking, ready to contribute to that plan. Is going to be a pitch here of Michael Hamilton of Spinal Crush. So that will eventually find its way to the bottom of the library, possibly playing a role in the late game. But Crown of Seed's going to go ahead and prevent a little damage here from these auras.
Michael Hamilton here, hoping to find another big play, finding the hotness, as it were, a second haze bending. That is a back-breaking, addition to the aura pool.
Yeah, this is kind of like where it gets interesting about the Genesis decision. I still think it was correct, but haze bending in multiples is problematic. Now you know those spectral shields are going to get really wide, and this is the point where Pheano can start pushing damage. You find something like a Shimmers, and the damage output just gets exponentially scaling, and the game could slip away from Michael. So let's see what the cleanup is here. Every time Pheano's gotten a little wide, Michael has had the answer, has had the lead the charge. Haven't seen Blink yet. We saw Time Skippers early on. So is there another answer from Michael? Can you find a way to clean up these haze bendings? And are you prepared for the fact that even if you clean them up, there's going to be an answer left behind because of these spectral shield tokens?
So I believe I see, is that there's an unmovable. I see another Herald. And is that a Miraging Metamorph, I think, that's floating around in there as well for Pheano?
It could be a Metamorph, or it could be that Spectral Shield I mentioned. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, Prismatic Shield could be something. He does have 3 in the deck, so he might be holding on to that. And again, we've seen 2 Merciful Retributions already off the board. So like we mentioned late game, if you can sneak one of those in with a board full of Spectral Shields, it gets gross.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Only one copy left, but if Pheano finds it at the right time, it's going to leave Michael Hamilton actually without outs. There's just something. There's nothing you can do in some scenarios.
Hydration, super important. Pheano just grabbing some water there to keep himself just hydrated and focused. But again, that cool, calm demeanor has got him this far, and I don't think it's going to change. But you can see a little bit more of the breathing. You know, you can see that he's just staring down his opponent. This is a board that he is so happy to have at this life total juncture right here. And Michael Hamilton is looking through his cards to find out what is the best course of action here. Because 2 haze bendings can leave a lot of garbage when the smoke clears.
Absolutely right, Flake. And speaking of cool, calm, collected, if you notice, we've kind of toned down a bit.
Yes, we have.
Hall is emptying out. We want to make sure the players don't hear us. Trust me, I'm every bit excited as you are, viewer. I promise you. Just want to make sure we preserve competitive integrity, don't leak any information, and let these players play the calling finals that they deserve to play.
It would have been possible, even if Tannen was here, that the players could see him.
Yeah, jumping up and down behind us.
That's correct.
Absolutely right.
All right, so trust us. We are both just bursting at the seams of excitement and just pure suspense here, but we do have to respect the fact that we do not want to convey any information to these players. We want this game to go the way it's meant to be, which is player on player. The cards are going to dictate how this goes through. And as it stands now, Winter's Bite has been played. That's going to force Pheano to have to pay or discard. So he's just... Usually, 99% of the time, you're just paying here, floating some resource if necessary. We've seen it in the past where you pitch and you'll get some extra, you know, you can use the remaining float to create a Spectral Shield out of Soul. But right now, Prism doesn't have that. So maybe he gets rid of the Unmovable here.
Yeah, that's an option. We also could, you know, if we have a blue, pitch and then have unmovable resources left over. So there's a few choices we can make here. And you're going to see 2 floating here from Pheano.
So 2 float, that does mean perhaps you pitch another yellow, and then you can sneak out an aura if necessary.
Absolutely.
All right, so that is the first salvo of this turn for Michael Hamilton. Winter's Bite, there was no fusion of Starvo, so there's either a bunch of lightning or a bunch of earth in there, or maybe it's just a bunch of guardian attacks. But I feel like if it was guardian attacks, he would have probably gone for it. So here he comes with the hammer at haze bending, and we're about to see why 2 haze bendings can be gross.
Yeah, Spectral Shield heading up to 4 now, really getting onto the battlefield for Pheano. And it's time to bring up that old talking point, Flake. Stalagmite on Michael Hamilton's side. Chilling there. We've basically seen Michael turn to Stalagmite in every matchup. It's rare that he heads to Rampart of the Ram's Head. And, I spent all weekend being convinced that I was wrong for relying too much on Stalagmite. But you see the way Michael has built his deck. You see the way he plays. You see the immense value he's gotten out of those Stalagmites in endgame situations. That's what he saves them for. He saves them for when the chips are down, when it really matters, when he's got to seize back the initiative. Michael finds a way, usually through that Stalagmite. But speaking of season initiative, here's a big play from Pheano Black.
Yeah, that is the prismatic shield that we were talking about. And the whole debate about Stalagmite comes from the fact that a lot of people just put it at face value. If it's blocks 3, creates 2 frostbites. But when you're facing down a board by Pheano Black, in this case, where he's going to have go again for free swings on all of these, stuffing the first spectral shield that comes in for 1 with the Stalagmite is not just blocking the 1, it's blocking all the subsequent auras that would have attacked you that he can no longer afford to do so. So it's not a block of 1. It's a block of, in this case, potentially 8 or more. So that's what he's doing. So good call on that one, Brian. Again, the debate still rages on. Ram's Head over Stalagmite. I love Stalagmite.
Both have their place for sure. It's all about player style, deck building. That Frostbite is going to come out. So if we're going to do any more attacking here, we're going to have to pay. Instead, Pheano chooses to take the Arsenal. Had the option to go ahead and pay through that Frostbite. Doesn't want to. Thinks the next turn is more important. And that tells you there could be big things headed in Michael Hamilton's way.
If that's a merciful retribution that's in that Arsenal, then that could be very dangerous.
Yeah,
but
scary for sure.
Michael Hamilton doing his own scary moves here. All right, Earth, Lightning, Ice.
Big time for that.
Yeah, definitely. Starvo is certainly the star of the show, front row center over here. He's going to be adding a lot of extra throttle to this move that Michael Hamilton's going to be making. I believe that was a red Earth card, if I'm not mistaken.
Break Ground does look like a red to me, so that's going to be particularly large, getting that boost from the Starvo. And, we talk about these blank attacks, as we call them, just doing damage. They're not blank when they're being played into Prism, though, because if that cleans up Spectral Shields, that's a really big deal.
So in this case, again, there's the immovable. So that's what he ended up dunking into the arsenal there to go ahead and stuff this. And I like this play. Again, vanilla damage doesn't necessarily mean much, but what this means in this case is you're 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 blocking so that unmovable that which hit the board. Pierce Reality was pitched there. Unmovable hits the board to block this out, and this does two things. It's not only soaking damage, but it's also maintaining 7 spectral shields on the board, and that is huge.
Yeah, big time for that unmovable. Again, another one of these scenarios where players are firing their best shots at each other, and the answer is there. That's why I love this metagame so much, Flake. I think these games come down to so many back and forth situations, so many huge swings of momentum. I mean, there hasn't been a bad game all day. Every single one is just breathtaking, interesting, and comes down to the wire. And we're seeing another classic here in the finals.
Playing the Winter's Bite after the Starvo effect is buying a card out of Pheano Black's hand, and I think that if you're going to be attacking, you know, you're likely just going to be able to soak some of it off of the Spectral Shield or whatnot. In this case, this guarantees that you're getting a card out of hand, and I think that's what Michael Hamilton's looking to do here, is this to limit the follow-up turn. Keep in mind here, Brian, there is no soul. You know, Prism is just running on empty here, so you cannot just generate a Spectral Shield and go nuts, but there's another. Oh my gosh. So we are at 8. Again, Haze bending, leaving some stuff to be desired.
Look at this follow-up. Ode to Wrath coming down from Pheano Black. And you know when you really don't want to see an Ode to Wrath? When there's 8 Spectral Shields out there.
Now, the beautiful part about this is he's only getting 1 attack. So at the very least, Michael will have a very clean, clear chance to go ahead and respond before this gets out of hand. Now, 8 Spectral Shields plus the Ode to Wrath, that is 9 damage on hit 18. And that is too much for Michael to handle. So
yeah, and look at when this came, Flake. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's such an important juncture here. No arsenal for Michael, so this shouldn't be a high-powered turn. But as I say that, Bravo, star of the show, reveals 3 cards, and that means possibly a red Autumn's Touch going to get powered up and take out those Spectral Shields.
Oh, hold on a second.
Never mind, even better.
Who needs an arsenal when you have a double fused Oakenold? So this is coming in as 11, Dominate, Go Again. But there are 8 Spectral Shields. But I don't think the on-hit is what Michael Hamilton is worried about.
No, this is about damage, Flake. This is about cleaning up those Spectral Shields. And again, another situation where Pheano looked like he was starting to wrestle control, and Michael Hamilton just has the perfect answer.
Yeah, he's coming in with the Hoover on this one. He wants full-on vacuum cleaner power. There's 8 Spectral Shields that, again, Oakenold connecting doesn't matter. And I don't even think Michael Hamilton's going to be too weary about if Pheano Black can sneak in a merciful retribution here. It would be painful, don't get me wrong, but I think the thing that Michael is most concerned about is having a board that is this wide, especially with an Ode to Wrath on board. But we can guarantee that there's going to be a follow-up of Hammer into Ode to Wrath, because there's no reason Michael should let all of those auras get double the value.
Yeah, and that's going to bring Michael right back to where he's comfortable living, in that empty aura zone.
And no soul, still no soul. Pheano has done so much work to make this happen. He's just going to go ahead, throw one of the heralds out into the abyss, and you could see how desperately he's trying to protect that board. He's blocking for 5. There's going to be of 11, so that's 6 that comes through. And Michael Hamilton has done a great job of just giving that board quite the restructuring.
Pheano holding on to whatever offense can possibly get, but it's not much. It's 2 Spectral Shields and just an absolute haymaker of a turn from Michael Hamilton. As we proceed toward the end of this calling, things get just tighter and tighter and tighter every single turn. Both players extracting maximum value from every single turn. And here you see Wartune Herald coming down for Pheano.
Yeah, that is some aggression as necessary. It's only the blue, so it's coming in for 5. No big deal. But the important element here is the fact that you're pitching yellow. You have your footsteps if necessary. It's 5 damage is 5 damage. The most important aspect that Pheano wants to do here is just start loading up that soul. He needs to be able to find an outlet to pitch yellow to gain go again on his auras. So in this case, 5 on hit doesn't seem too scary, but the on hit does open up future turns and future potential here. And it's going to be that 5 points and 2 more Spectral Shields that, again, will potentially tickle some damage.
Yeah, we are going to see Hamilton go ahead and deploy Glacial Footsteps, trying to go ahead and break That Herald does so, but resources are paid into the Phantasmal Footsteps. That's going to go ahead and allow these Spectral Shields to come in for 2 damage.
One more charge on Stalagmite is an important element, like we saw. It could really factor in late game. That extra Frostbite can be dangerous, but still, you still have the gloves. And I'm thinking that there is definitely a Herald out there that he is concerned about, that those gloves are waiting to catch.
I think you're exactly right. Herald of Erudition, sort of the Game Breaker Herald. It's the one that hits different from all the other ones. Speaking of Game Breakers, here's a pretty nice swing from Michael. It's not the ultimate Oakenolds that we've seen in the past, but it's an efficient Oakenold.
Yeah. This is a flesh and blood like Grandma used to play. It's just pitch and throw damage, right? And there's no fusion, none of this nonsense. There's no on-hit effects. It's just here 7, have fun. And it's an awkward block. But again, Michael Hamilton's strategy here, I feel, is just to clean up those Spectral Shields.
You're exactly right. Force some damage through. Either going to take a bunch of cards out of Pheano's hand or going to challenge those Spectral Shields. Either one pretty acceptable for Michael. Looking for a little bit of clarity here from the judge. Going to check in on some stuff.
That judge, that's Amanda. She's a level 2 head judge here, and she's been doing an exceptional job of keeping all of these games on the rails. So thank you to Amanda, who's done an excellent job judging, as well as, just the entire team this weekend has been spot on.
Phenomenal judge crew. Not only doing the job of, going ahead and judging these matches, but keeping us informed, keeping us in the loop, getting us the deck sheets we need to bring you this coverage, getting us all the information we have to have. I can't say enough good things about the judge staff here at the call-in.
All right, so there's 4 cards that are just on the board there. I think while the judges are essentially just sort of, parsing through what the concern is here. And again, this is the finals, Brian, so you have to make sure that you know exactly what's going on. Any point of confusion that you misinterpret can lead to a very, very difficult situation here. All right, so at the moment, I think, Brian, there's just a few things that they're just sorting out, which is fine. But at this juncture in the game, you'd think that typically the Starvo player would have been super aggressive. Typically, the Prism player will be in the teens by this point, while the Starvo player is in the high 20s, low 30s. But that's not the case in this, because Michael Hamilton plays it differently.
Yeah, slow and steady. Just go ahead, control those auras, and Michael Hamilton has done a bang-up job at doing so thus far. But you got to push damage. You got to find a way through. Otherwise, Pheano's just going to find some window. And we've seen it be so close. Got really wide with those Spectral Shields at one point, but Hamilton had the perfect answer to come back with. At the same time, Hamilton, when he found some offense, it was the D-Reacts out of Arsenal from Pheano. So all these haymakers being thrown, neither player really finding purchase, just trading small bits of life and keeping us at parity.
All right, we're going back to the action now as everything's been resolved, and it's still a 7-attack Oakenold. 2 Spectral Shields still sitting there. And looking at the hand, I do see a Sink Below in Pheano's hand.
Sink Below, potentially able to protect those Spectral Shields in combination with another card. That would still leave Pheano with a pretty decent comeback should he have some way to potentially pitch a yellow. You'll be able to force a little bit more damage.
I think Michael might be just examining, okay, how many of those D-React Silkies? There's, okay, 1 unmovable, 2 unmovables. I've seen 2. I think so. He's like, is that what's in Arsenal? And maybe Pheano, maybe Michael is suggesting in this case, it's like, okay, if that isn't unmovable, does he want to use it here? Because there's no on-hit effect. How much does he value 2 little measly tokens?
Yeah, and that's what the game's all about, finding out when you can best utilize your resources, figuring out, is this something I need to protect? Is it something I can wait on? Is it time for these D-Reacts to go ahead and keep some momentum on my side of the battlefield?
And this is that important juncture what you're talking about, where the fact that Michael Hamilton sat there and studied this sheet. So when you're going through that graveyard, and again, he's looking at his zone saying, what do I have left? So as it stands now, studying the deck list, studying your opponent's deck sheet, and then going through that graveyard, that can be very important to just know what's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's exactly what we saw Hamilton doing. So instead of trying to protect these Spectral Shields, it looks like we're just going to go ahead and bring down a Parable of Humility from Michael Hamilton, or excuse me, from Pheano Black.
So Parable of Humility is in one of those, again, those 4 drops auras at instant speed that will essentially give each one of those attacks a 1-point haircut. So that is now a 6-point 6-attack Oakenold, but still good enough to not just push some tempo, but also clean up that aura. And look at this, man.
Just ready. At the ready is Michael Hamilton. Always going to drop a blink, has the pitch for the hammer, and cleans up that parable of humility instantly.
So Pheano now at 18, Michael Hamilton at 20. But what's important here was that it was a clean board. It was back to square one as both players were basically starting over. Now, here we go. He's going to go ahead and drop the shimmers, but Michael Hamilton also wants to just make sure that there's no trickery here with the crown of reflection. The crown of reflection can only be used on your action phase, but it is an instant. It's another way, if you have a spectral shield on the board, to trade up that spectral shield, basically upgrade it, turn that Charmander into a Charizard, so to speak, and turn a spectral shield into a Shimmers, into a Haze Bending, and it's still there, and it's still can be done. But now Michael Hamilton is finally clapping back.
Yeah, speaking of upgrades, now it's time for this Autumn's Touch to get upgraded a little bit. I believe Blue. Would you agree with me there, Flake?
I think so.
Okay. Now, Michael Hamilton, of course, leaning very hard on yellow Autumn's Touch as well, so it's possible that's what we're looking at. Does have 3 copies of yellow in the deck. Loves these Autumn's Touch. Again, 9 copies of Autumn's Touch. You want to guess why that's the case, Flake? I'll tell you. 3 block. That's what it's all about. 3 block. Michael Hamilton is looking for it every single chance he can get.
That is absolutely true. We've seen just how his demeanor has been and his stance in terms of what's important. And in his mind, 3 block is so key. It is a critical aspect. And in those mirrors, like you mentioned, blocking out a hammer with a 3 block and a crown does save the day. So this is only a 7 attack. So it was a blue Autumn's Touch that comes in with the Starvo ability, bringing it up to 7. And it's just going to get blocked with 3, no problem. Some of that damage is going to leak in. And once again, Michael Hamilton going to work.
I mean, Bravo is not a deck that is supposed to go again every single turn, but Michael Hamilton always has it. Such a well-built deck. The lead, the charges are there, the blinks are there, the Bravo activations are there, and just cleaning up these auras time after time. But Pheano going to go ahead and look to get a little wide again. 3 auras being made on the back of that prismatic shield.
No soul again, and giving up a big piece like Erudition here. I think Pheano's just saying, okay, you haven't even used your gloves. You have so much going on here that this Erudition is essentially punchless. So nice move here by the Stalagmite. I think Michael might have another big turn coming up.
Quite possible. Going to go ahead and deploy those resources. Pheano going to pay for the Frostbite this time. That is going to cost Arsenal on the next turn. Also, Janai's possibly playing the Shimmers. So I think, again, Michael has identified the spot where it was time to go ahead and use that Stalagmite. Just has like a sixth sense for when is this going to be most punishing for my opponent.
That's reps. That's reps. That's experience. That's being in this position multiple times. It's practicing this exact scenario and knowing exactly without too much hesitation as to how to approach this situation. And that's exactly what he has done. And in this case, I mean, Pheano has done everything necessary to establish an aura game. Unfortunately, that's his second prismatic shield I believe he played, so 3 more spectral shields on the board, but those are just going to get gobbled up. Michael Hamilton is going to play Pac-Man on those spectral shields following up over here and just absolutely devour them, as he has been doing for turn after turn after turn.
Yeah, takes up that tunic. Going to go ahead and deploy Spinal Crush. A big salvo from Michael Hamilton here, looking to push some real damage Pheano's Black's way. And look, again, Pheano finally establishes some battlefield presence, gets some spectral shields out there, tries to start some offense, and Michael says, yeah, I just have another huge attack. I have exactly what I need to clean up these spectral shields, unless you want to give me your entire hand.
And in this case, again, I don't think he's even that worried if there's a block coming through. The crush effect in this case for Spinal Crush being the fact that if you deal 4 or more damage, it will have the effect of that crush, which is limiting go again. But ultimately, I think that the name of the game here is this: he's trying to be happy with just gobbling up those spectral shields. But another big stuff, that is the third unmovable.
Unreal how the back and forth has gone every single time. It's like, okay, this person has exactly what they need in this turn. The other person has exactly what they need to answer it.
So no more cards in hand. Or there's 1 more card in hand, I should say, from Pheano Black. But if you do go ahead and pop the Phantasm on this Miraging Metamorph, you're cloning a Spectral Shield, and I think that is a fair trade for the damage that you might pick up, and that 1 resource that could potentially be used with the Phantasmal Footsteps to recover the action point means that there's nothing left in your hand. So we'll see what happens here. There's a Crown of Reflection again, another peek at Crown of Reflection here, and this might be a situation where perhaps Pheano Black decides to go ahead and make that trade up.
I think so. I think the time has come where you you want to get something here. So it is going to be Glacial Footsteps popping that Metamorph. Let's see what it does.
So he's recovering the action point. That's no problem here. He's going to go ahead and clone one of those Spectral Shields, so he's back up to 3. And that's okay. And I think that's a trade-up that Michael Hamilton is okay to take. He's going to be taking 3 instances of 1 here, and there's still 1 more card in Pheano's hand. And is it an Arsenal card, or is it a Blue Aura?
Looks like it's an Arsenal card, and that's going to go ahead, pop in there. And Pheano going to head into the next turn with a pretty full grip.
I think that Michael Hamilton got off on that turn a way ahead than he thought he would be.
Yeah, and this is a good way to keep the pressure up. Oaken Old Fused coming in for a big 9. Not the biggest possible output for the Oaken Old. We've seen the 11.1s, but 9 is pretty damn good, and that's going to put Pheano in the grinder now as he makes a decision, tries to preserve some of these Spectral Shields. Is there a Defense React in hand for Pheano? We know the Unmovables are gone. Are there Soul Shields left? I don't think so. I don't see a D-React here.
There's, unless that, I mean, whatever's in the pocket there could be another Sink Below, but there's no more Unmovables, and those are the clutch ones here. And look at them. They're basically saying, all right, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. They're just going through each other's, doing the study thing again. And look, there's 1 Unmovable. Keep going through. You're going to see the second Unmovable. There's the third. So Michael Hamilton knows that there's no more party tricks that he needs to worry about here, as that Oaken Old as a 9 dominate is going to get some significant value here.
Really tough decision for Pheano here to decide what he wants to commit to defense, both preserving life total, preserving cards in hand. If you're trying to preserve your hand, you're pretty much committed to a full block here. If you're trying to preserve Spectral Shields, you're pretty much committed to a full block here.
It is dominated, though. So full block is going to be difficult to pull off. Unless that's a Sink Below that's in the arsenal, you could potentially go ahead, drop a 3 and a 3 block, and then the 4, and then you're keeping 1 Spectral Shield on the board. Maybe that's okay. At this rate, I think Pheano's just saying, all right, as long as I don't buy the whole, he doesn't buy my whole hand, we're okay. But that is under the assumption that that pocketed card in the arsenal is a 4 block defense reaction.
No, you're exactly right, Flake. And I'm so used to these Oaken Olds being charged up with Bravo. When it's not, I'm like, oh, Dominate must not be part of the card. It is. Oaken Old is that good. It's absolutely preposterous.
It's built right in. Okay, so
we do have the Soul
Shield.
A clutch Soul Shield from Pheano here. Going to prevent that damage, keep those Spectral Shields on board. Again, a huge salvo from Michael Hamilton. Pheano has the answer.
There is no go again here. Because it wasn't a Starvo fuse, but at the very least, we are again buying resources. Again, keep track here: 3 Soul Shields, 3 Unmovables, 3 Sink Belows. 9 of these D-Reacts are floating around, and Michael Hamilton is saying, "Okay, come on, just one time, don't have it. One time, don't have it."
Pheano's saying the exact same thing, though. Michael Hamilton has just had the response he needed in every situation, and I think you're seeing exactly why players have come to appreciate this metagame. Are there 2 top decks? Absolutely. Are we seeing them battle in the finals of the Calling Indianapolis? Absolutely. Are these games incredible? Also, absolutely.
Absolutely. Here's a little update on my pen. It is now in 19 pieces.
Shreds. I don't even know what Flake is doing to this pen at this point.
To shreds, you say. Absolutely. And looking at Michael Hamilton's grip here, we see Channel Lake Frigid. There's some earth in there. If he hunts some lightning, that could really do a number on those Spectral Shields once again.
Yeah, but Hamilton is going to go ahead and eat some damage here, and that's where the trouble starts.
All right, passing Mirage. That is a nice way to protect that first Illusionist attack, and both players have been there, done that. So for those who are unaware, the first Illusionist attack could potentially be one of those Spectral Shields, but you want to use that Phantasm protection on one of those Heralds. In this case, there it is, flashing the hotness.
Yeah, and Autumn's Touch going to be paid for by that Lightning Surge, going to come in for 9 Dominate. That is going to put a hurting on those Spectral Shields, unless another copy of Soul Shield, but I don't think we have it this time. I think this one's getting off for Michael Hamilton.
And Michael Hamilton is finally saying, all right, okay, there's a Genesis.
Finally.
There's a Genesis.
Finally.
Erudition in hand, Genesis in hand. I don't see a Soul Shield, and there's no more Unmovables. No red cards, I believe, that are in there. It's just 4 yellows, so there's no Sink Belows. I think I saw a War Tune in there, if I'm not mistaken. So right now, Pheano's saying, okay, it's vanilla damage. how important is this? If I can come back with an erudition, but ultimately the erudition is going to get stuffed potentially by one of those the gloves. So there is so many situations here where Pheano has just been really just racking his brain. How can I establish an aura game? But like you mentioned, Michael Hamilton has been approaching this matchup from a different angle.
Built different. Michael Hamilton, both in deck and play.
I think now he's counting the soul shields. He might just be saying, all right, do you have this one too? Come on. So 9 dominate is what's going on right now. The fusion of the Starvo ability means that that 9 dominate go again is the first. That is the main course, but dessert's right around the corner with a frosty hammer.
Here's what I'm thinking is going on here. Pheano's thinking about just eating this damage. I mean, this decision isn't that hard if you're trying to find your best block. If you're like, can I actually afford to take this 9, give up these spectral shields, take 5? And I think that's exactly what's happening. Pheano just says, I can afford to take this hit. And that must mean what he's coming back with is pretty good. We're going to have to see how Michael Hamilton wants to disrupt that. This is another interesting spot, Flake. If I had an ice card here for my Winter's Whale, which Hamilton does, or can deploy that Channel Lake Frigid, which I think is another valid option. But it feels like this is the moment where you're supposed to go face, where you're supposed to go ahead and let that passing Mirage sit out there on the battlefield. But no, Michael Hamilton, of course, proving me wrong, going after passing Mirage once again. He plays one way. He controls these auras. That's what the game plan is all about.
Built different, so he's going to go ahead and cheat out a Genesis. Once the coast is clear, there's no more action points to be had. Genesis is on the board. Pitching those Heralds again, but this is a clutch piece here because the other card in hand is a Light Illusionist card, so at the start of the turn, he's going to go ahead and load the Soul.
Yep.
I think this is like... There hasn't been many cards in Soul. There's been a Soul Shield in there, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So that is a nice way to start establishing some jam here as the Genesis creates a card draw and a Spectral Shield, and now we can get naughty.
Yeah, just that one Spectral Shield going to be moving in. I'd assume this is it. I think there's a good chance Pheano wants to Arsenal and try and build something heading into the next turn. But every time I assume something, these masterful players prove me wrong. So let's just go ahead and see what Pheano does here.
Yeah, let them dictate the pace here, dictate the play. That die on the board, the 9, that is from a turn ago, so that is insignificant. We don't need to look at that. What we need to look at, frankly, is the fact that Pheano has a Genesis on board for the first time in a long time, and he's going to go ahead and create another Spectral Shield. So again, build up that aura game. It seems like every time Michael Hamilton just, pulls the rug under that aura plan, the table just gets reset immediately.
Back and forth, just over and over. It's exactly what this game is about.
This game has gone on for over 50 minutes, which is typically what a classic constructed game would go to. In the finals, however, in the top 8, there is no time limit. We want these games to be resolved the way that they should be, with one player coming out on top, as both players here have really put the work in to really keep those life totals so uniform. 9 to 10. It's been this back and forth, like you mentioned, tug of war on both sides. There's the lead the charge. That means the deck has recycled.
Yeah, there we go again. Lead the charge, ready to go ahead and control these auras. I think your knowledge that this deck has been recycled is very good. I'd expect cards to get, on average, worse for Michael Hamilton, although there were some very, I would call, astute pitches early on in the game. I remember a Spinal Crush that was given to the pitch. There's big hits left. You just got to find the right moments for him. And I don't even know if Michael Hamilton cares about big hits. As long as he's out there controlling these auras, plinking, making those small attacks, I think he's in his zone and happy.
This game has been a chess match, absolutely. And it has not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's unorthodox, the approach here, but Michael Hamilton has basically taken a different route to that same endgame of controlling auras. He's been very patient, which a lot of Starvo players typically like to just eat damage to swing face. Michael Hamilton does not want that to happen. He wants to be able to go ahead and do what he's got to do. So there's the block, protecting some of the Spectral Shields that are on the board. And again, Pheano doing a really good job of protecting that board presence.
Yeah, trying desperately to cling to those sources of damage. Those faux Kodachis, if you will.
Fodachis.
At some point, we'll see a real Kodachi down there in the feature match area again. There was one this weekend.
There was. I got to cast a old school. Well, I say old school Katsu. Katsu versus old school Bravo. This is Bravo Showstopper. And what's amazing about that is the player who played Showstopper, is a gentleman named Clark, came to talk to me afterwards, and he had no idea that I casted his match. And I went to talk to him. I'm like, "Hey, man, that was awesome." And the whole pummel strategy was really exciting to see. There's the Parable of Humility again. There's another aura, and if you're keeping track, I mean, eventually you'd think that Pheano would just run out of these, but he's just pulling them out of thin air.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is rich with auras, right? A large percentage of the deck is comprised of just these things that generate battlefield presence. A unique approach to Flesh and Blood. No other deck plays like Prism. I love it, though. I think it's so unique and now captures the flavor of Illusionist so well. But look what we have developing over on Michael's side. It looks like we have found our 3 elements again, and it's that Pulse of Candlehold.
That's the yellow one. That's the one that'll go ahead and put more attacks on top of your deck. So there's a little bit of late game, potential damage if necessary. So that is always there. And
Yeah, and look at this. Michael is spending it. Going to go ahead and load those Oaken Olds to the top of the deck. Wants to have access to them.
I love that play. And in this case, well, we're still got to go ahead. Fusing Starvo is one thing, but you don't necessarily have the jam here.
Well, here's the thing, though, Flake. There's an arsenal. And that means if he wants to go ahead and activate Crown of Seeds on the turn, you can go ahead and get a fresh card and draw one of those Oaken Olds, leverage the Bravo ability, and go right after Pheano here.
That's true. This might be that juncture of the game where perhaps the player, the Starvo player, has to just give up on the aura cleaning and go right back to face. Just get straight at the life total. Start attacking what matters most. He's done so much work in cleaning up auras over time, and at this point...
Here it is, Flake. Crown of Seeds going to go ahead and draw that top card off the deck. That's an Oaken Old.
Wonderful play. Impressive play the whole way through. You gotta love it. And with the Tunic means that's coming in for free.
Oh, and guess what? It's fused up, too. That is the biggest Oaken Old imaginable. That's going to go ahead and push through for 11 Dominate.
Michael Hamilton, you glorious bastard. That was amazing play. What a masterful move there.
Perfect patience. Just incredible patience. And you know what? There's an Oaken Old coming on the next turn, too. And this is the moment. This is the moment where Michael Hamilton looks to stake a claim, possibly carve out that second calling championship for himself.
That was so masterful again. This is why Michael Hamilton is here, because of these types of plays, playing the patience game and just using that Pulse of Candlehold to load up the card, get that Crown of Seeds activation, and having everything line up absolutely flawlessly. In conjunction with the Tunic, you were able to play it and fuse it. Incredible.
Breathtaking play from Michael Hamilton. Really, there's no other way to describe it. It's just so perfect, so clean. And now Pheano has to find a response. Do we have the D-React again? I think I saw the Soul Shield. Absolutely, it's the Soul Shield pulled to the front. So there is a good block available. Not a great block. I mean, there's just no possibility of a great block here.
The issue is that with the Dominate, he would have rather had that Soul Shield, obviously, in Arsenal.
Oh,
that way
100%.
You could have stuffed this all the way through, but this has got to feel good if you're Michael Hamilton. That's 1, 2, 6. That means 8 plus the 2. There's no on-hit here, but you bought a Tunic, and you bought some Footsteps.
Yeah, huge value here for Michael. Going to clear out so many pieces of equipment. It's not the most valuable Oaken Old you can get, but it's real close. And then finally, that Winner's Wail. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to clean out those auras one more time. Parable of Humility. Going to hit the bin. And Michael Hamilton, I would say now firmly in the driver's seat. Going to draw an Oaken Old, we know, and try and set up for one more big turn that could be the straw that finally breaks Pheano Black's back.
So like you mentioned, the way that was stacked, again, the Pulse of the Candlehold, putting the 2 Oaken Olds on top means that is one of the things that he's drawing, but he does need some more pieces to make this happen. All right, I believe that's a blue Herald. Pitching a blue for this, no go again, but there wasn't really an option to. However, with the 2 float, you can go ahead and use that resource if you want to with Prism to create another Spectral Shield by banishing that Soul Shield out of the Soul.
Yeah, I think that Oaken Old is now sitting in the arsenal for Michael. Is there an Elemental Fusion available in hand? Is that Bravo going to go ahead and again instill a massive attack? Because if so, you could see Michael Hamilton just go ahead and take this damage, which is incredible being at 7. But if the setup is that good, we just might see it here.
I got to say, after watching Pheano play this, I can see why he absolutely posterized the rest of the field.
No question.
Let's be real. It takes a Michael Hamilton to sort of pump the brakes on this runaway freight train that Pheano has been riding. But you could see just the constant pressure, despite the fact that Michael has been stopping him every time. He is constantly putting pressure on Michael, and Pheano has really established himself as a premier player of just masterful player of patience and constant pressure. He has shown that Prism is real. It is a power player here, but Michael Hamilton has been kind of playing that Starvo list from a different angle.
Yeah, Michael going to go ahead and clear out the arsenal here. So that maybe no Oakenolt's still in hand. Okay, so was able to save that. Must have misread the arsenal there. That means we're going to go ahead deploy Pulse here for +4 on the next elemental attack. That's going to be bolstering the Winter's Whale. No, it's going to be bolstering the Oakenold, just looking for as much damage as possible. Going to go ahead and push 11 Pheano Black's way.
And again, the objective here obviously is pressure, buy cards out of hand, but clean up that damn Spectral Shield. He doesn't want to see anything. Michael Hamilton's apartment must be absolutely spotless. Nothing left on the ground in any way, shape, or form. He has to be just happy to see that his game plan is coming to fruition. And it took a while to get here. We're just about to cross the 1 hour mark of this match, and he is still doing what he's doing. He is committed to the game plan, and it is really paying off here. That's 11 on that attack. No on-hit, no fuse, no nothing. But hey, man, 11 is 11.
Flake, you reach a point where it's only the numbers that matter, and it's when these life totals get real low. If you can make them big enough, that's all that's going to matter in the end of the game.
So here he comes. 11 on the hook. Pheano is just parsing out what that defense is going to look like. There's no dominate, so he can give up his hand, but this is a dangerous spot as well because Prism has a lot of cards that block for nothing. A lot of those instant speed cards that are going to be basically just pitch fodder, and with nothing in Soul, you can't create any Spectral Shields. That Crown of Reflection blocks for nothing, and that's exactly what the case was. There wasn't a whole lot going on. There were 2 cards in hand that blocked for nothing.
Yeah, and had to deploy a Parable of Humility to just hang on by inches here. Gonna go ahead and make a block is Pheano.
So Pheano should be down to 3 now. A 6, I believe, has snuck through, but that's the whole hand as well. It is at that juncture. All he can do now is just show that the Parable of Humility is on the board, and he just pushes it forward, say, all right, I'll take 1, I guess. But Michael Hamilton, before he makes a commitment here, he's going to see if it's, if the hand is such that he can afford to toss 1 in there and just kind of, block that out because it doesn't matter, the card doesn't matter, he will do so. But he's valuing this hand as it's now 3 to 6, 6 for Michael Hamilton, and the hand he has, he might like. There's that Spinal Crush you mentioned.
Yeah, finally coming back around. And again, big numbers are all that matter at this moment. Going to go ahead and deploy the Spinal Crush. Massive attack for 8. Parable of Humility doing a little bit to blunt that.
I will say this, like you mentioned, the poise of these players is important. I have played in in tournaments and pro quests, etc., where the player across from me was maybe new, and when the stakes were high, you see a little bit of that handshake, you see a little bit of that uneasiness. In this case, both players are absolutely stoic. They have been here before. They are ready for this. They do not get intimidated by the cameras. However many of you are out there in Twitch land watching this, they don't care. What matters to them is whoever's across the table and the cards on the board, and it shows. There's no jostling, no tilt, it's just pure poise the whole way through.
And look at this massive black block being lined up by Pheano Black. He's going to throw 3 cards in front of the Spinal Crush, trying to just preserve whatever life total he can, because there's no defensive resources really left for Pheano. There's no equipment on that side. Most of the D-reacts are burned at this point, and Pheano just hanging on by a thread, trying to find some way to push through points of damage against Michael Hamilton. But Michael Hamilton firmly in the driver's seat right now. That Crater Fist still has not had to make a block. You can still cash in that Tunic, but it's going to offer another resource on the next turn. Crown of Seeds still ready to do its thing. It's just about finding that last fusion for Michael Hamilton and pushing through some dominate damage, and we could have a champion here at the call in Indianapolis.
This is the first flare that's fired off when you're
Here's
saying
a fusion.
Yeah, we're calling the SOS. Is that a red evergreen?
I believe it is, and that's going to represent 9 dominate from Michael Hamilton. demands an answer on the part of Pheano Black.
I think there might be a last prismatic shield, unless that's a miraging metamorph, but that's 8 dominate with the Parable of Humility. So there's a little bit of silver lining here. You can block out with a 3. Is there a prismatic shield that you can throw at this as well? This is dangerous here.
Because there's also Go Again here, Flake, and if there's more resources available, that Winner's Wail could come in and clean up this game if there's not an effective block available.
It comes down to this, ladies and gentlemen. This is a fused Starvo on 3 life. Pheano Black needs to defend that life total with every inch of his being at this point. Scratching and clawing. Michael Hamilton has really put in the work to win this game, and he's so close. He is so close, but Pheano Black is no slouch when it comes to these situations. Like you mentioned, Brian, he has been chewing up Starvos and spitting him out. This is a situation I'm sure he's faced a bunch of times.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see Pheano Black fall to 1 here. Going to go ahead and make those prismatic shields. Get a little bit of protection from Spectral Shield. That means going to take 2 damage. Fall down to 1.
And there's that Parable of Humility saving the day for at least 1 more turn.
Absolutely. And what's the follow-up here for Michael Hamilton?
I mean, you got to go and face here, right? I mean, the only saving grace is if Pheano Black has anything else.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Oh, no. Yeah, a timely Winter's Bite buys the hand, and he's just
and that is going to do it. Winner's Wail does the last points of damage, and we have our champion, Michael Hamilton.